What started as a typical Elvis concert in Las Vegas became the largest coordinated search and rescue operation in entertainment history, when one announcement changed everything. Rose Williams, a 76-year-old lady with Alzheimer's disease, has gone missing somewhere in this building. Elvis's words echoed through the International Hotel as 15,000 fans realized they were no longer just audience members. They had become searchers in a race against time to find a vulnerable elderly woman before something terrible happened. Row by row, section by section, the entire arena mobilized with flashlights from purses, car keys for illumination, and the kind of community spirit that hadn't been seen since wartime. What they found when they discovered Rose Williams would explain why she had wandered away and reveal a connection to Elvis that nobody in that arena could have expected. How could one missing person emergency transform thousands of strangers into a unified community working toward a single purpose? This is the inspiring story of ordinary people becoming heroes, collective action in the face of crisis, and the moment when a concert audience proved that humanity's best instincts emerge when someone needs help. It was August 23, 1975, and Elvis Presley was 45 minutes into his second show of the evening at the Las Vegas International Hotel. The crowd of 15,000 was electric, hanging on every word of "Can't Help Falling in Love" as Elvis moved across the stage with the charisma that had made him the king of rock and roll. The arena was packed to capacity, with fans from around the world who had traveled thousands of miles for this moment. In the third row, center section, sat Rose Williams, a 76-year-old woman with silver hair and kind eyes that sparkled with joy as she watched Elvis perform. Beside her was her husband Henry, 78, who held her hand gently while keeping a watchful eye on her every movement. Their daughter Patricia, 52, sat on Rose's other side, occasionally checking her mother's purse to make sure her medications were still there. Rose had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 18 months earlier, and while the progression had been gradual, her family had noticed increasing confusion and disorientation in recent weeks. But tonight was special. Tonight Rose seemed more alert than she had been in months, singing along to every song and clapping with genuine enthusiasm. "She remembers every word," Henry whispered to Patricia during a brief instrumental break. "It's like she's 20 years younger when she hears his music." Patricia nodded, fighting back tears of both joy and sadness. She had been hesitant about bringing her mother to such a crowded, stimulating environment, but Henry had insisted. "Music is the only thing that still reaches her," he had argued. "If Elvis can give her one more good night, it's worth the risk." What none of them knew was that Rose's connection to Elvis Presley went back much further than her current role as a devoted fan. In 1954, when Elvis was an unknown 19-year-old who had just recorded his first song at Sun Studio, Rose Williams had been one of Memphis's most popular radio DJs. She worked at WHBQ, a small station that prided itself on supporting local talent. When Sam Phillips brought Elvis's recording of "That's All Right" to various radio stations, most DJs dismissed it as too different, too raw, too risky for their audiences. But Rose Williams heard something special in that young man's voice. She played the song on her afternoon show, talked about the talented local boy who was trying to make it in music, and encouraged her listeners to support him. Rose had championed Elvis's early career when no one else would take a chance on him. She played his first recordings, interviewed him on her show, and helped build the local fan base that would eventually propel him to national stardom. Elvis had never forgotten her kindness, and on several occasions during his rise to fame, he had publicly credited Rose Williams as one of the people who had believed in him from the beginning. But by 1975, Rose's memories of those early days were fading, locked away by the cruel progression of Alzheimer's disease. She still loved Elvis's music, still felt a deep emotional connection to his songs, but she could no longer remember why. The disease had stolen her professional identity, her proud career in radio, and most of her personal memories. What remained was pure emotion, the feeling that this man's voice meant something important to her, even if she couldn't quite remember what. Elvis was midway through "Can't Help Falling in Love" when Henry noticed that Rose was no longer sitting beside him. He looked around quickly, assuming she had gone to the restroom, but her purse was still in her seat, and she would never leave her medications behind. "Patricia," Henry said urgently, grabbing his daughter's arm. "Where's your mother?" Patricia looked around frantically. Rose had been there just moments ago, singing along with a smile on her face. Now her seat was empty, and in a venue this size she could be anywhere. "She was just here," Patricia said, standing up to get a better view. "Mom? Mom? Where are you?" But Rose was nowhere to be seen. The crowd was dense, the lighting was dim except for the stage, and the music was loud enough to drown out any calls for help. Patricia felt her heart rate accelerate as she realized the magnitude of the situation. A 76-year-old woman with Alzheimer's disease was lost somewhere in a building with 15,000 people. "We need to find security," Henry said, his voice trembling with worry. "She could be anywhere. She could be scared, confused. She might not even remember our names." Patricia was already pushing through the row of seats, apologizing to other concert-goers as she made her way toward the aisle where she could see security personnel stationed. The nearest guard was a tall man in his 30s who was watching the crowd for any signs of trouble. "Excuse me," Patricia said breathlessly, "we need help. My mother is missing. She's 76 years old, and she has Alzheimer's disease. She was sitting right here just a few minutes ago, and now she's gone." The security guard immediately understood the seriousness of the situation. Missing persons cases were always urgent, but an elderly person with dementia in a crowded venue was a potential catastrophe waiting to happen. "What's your mother's name?" the guard asked, speaking into his radio to alert the security team. "Rose Williams. She's wearing a blue dress and a white cardigan. She has silver hair, and she's about 5 feet 4 inches tall. She might be confused or scared." The security guard nodded grimly. He had been trained in protocols for missing persons, but those protocols involved small numbers of security staff systematically searching a massive venue while trying not to panic the crowd. With 15,000 people and countless places for someone to get lost or confused, finding one elderly woman could take hours. Hours they might not have. "We'll start a search immediately," the guard assured Patricia. "Can you stay with your father and keep checking her seat in case she comes back on her own? Sometimes people with dementia return to the last place they remember being." But as minutes ticked by, there was no sign of Rose. Security teams were checking bathrooms, concession areas, and exits, but the International Hotel was enormous. There were multiple levels, dozens of corridors, storage areas, employee-only sections, and thousands of people moving around constantly. Finding one disoriented elderly woman was like finding a needle in a haystack. Meanwhile, Elvis continued performing, unaware of the crisis unfolding in his audience. He was in the middle of his set, completely focused on giving his fans the show they had paid to see. His band was tight, his voice was strong, and the crowd was responsive. It was shaping up to be one of those special nights that reminded him why he loved performing. But backstage, word of the missing person was spreading quickly through the security team. The head of security, a former police officer named Captain James Morrison, was coordinating the search effort while trying to balance thoroughness with discretion. The last thing anyone wanted was to cause a panic that could create additional safety hazards. "How long has she been missing?" Morrison asked the guard who had first been contacted by Patricia. "We're going to find her," Elvis said with determination. "I don't care if it takes all night." Elvis walked back to center stage, and the arena gradually quieted as people realized something unusual was happening. This wasn't part of the normal show routine, and Elvis's expression was more serious than anyone had seen during a performance. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis said into his microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's sound system. "I need your attention for something very important. We have a situation here tonight that's more important than any song I could sing." The arena fell completely silent. 15,000 people focused entirely on Elvis as he continued. "Rose Williams, a 76-year-old lady with Alzheimer's disease, has gone missing somewhere in this building. She's been gone for over 30 minutes, and our security folks have been looking for her, but they need our help. This lady could be scared, she could be confused, and she might not remember how to get back to where she belongs. The crowd began to murmur with concern, but Elvis held up his hand for continued attention. "Now, I know y'all came here to see a show, and I appreciate that more than you know. But right now, we've got a grandmother who needs help, and I can't in good conscience continue singing while she's out there lost and maybe frightened. So here's what we're going to do." Elvis paused, looking around the arena at the thousands of faces now focused entirely on him. "We're going to turn this concert into the biggest search party Las Vegas has ever seen. I'm asking every one of you to help find Rose Williams. She's wearing a blue dress and a white cardigan. She has silver hair, and she's about 5 feet 4 inches tall. She might not respond if you call her name, and she might be scared of strangers, but she needs our help." What happened next was unprecedented in the history of live entertainment. Instead of disappointment or complaints about the interrupted show, the audience began to respond with enthusiasm for the search effort. People started standing up, looking around their immediate areas, and talking to their neighbors about how to organize an effective search. Hold on, Elvis continued, raising his hand again. "We need to do this smart and safe. I want everyone to stay calm and work together. Security is going to coordinate this, but I need everyone to help. Check under your seats, check the aisles, check anywhere someone might be sitting or resting. If you find her, don't scare her, just let security know immediately." Captain Morrison quickly realized that Elvis had just given him the resources to conduct the most thorough search possible. Instead of a dozen security guards trying to cover a massive building, he now had 15,000 volunteers willing to help find Rose Williams. Morrison took the stage microphone from Elvis and began organizing the search effort. "Thank you all for your willingness to help," Morrison said. "Here's how we're going to do this. I want everyone to search their immediate area first, under seats, in aisles, anywhere someone might be sitting or resting. Then we'll systematically search section by section. If you find Mrs. Williams, please don't approach her yourself. Wave to get a security guard's attention, and we'll handle it from there. She might be confused or scared, and we want to make sure she's handled by trained personnel. About 20 minutes now. Family says she has Alzheimer's disease, so she could be anywhere and might not respond to her name or remember how to get back." Morrison grimaced. 20 minutes in a venue this size meant the missing person could have traveled significant distances, possibly even left the building entirely. But his experience told him that people with dementia often sought quiet, enclosed spaces when they became overwhelmed or confused. Focus the search on storage areas, employee break rooms, any quiet spaces where someone might go to escape crowd noise. Morrison instructed his team, and check with all exits to see if anyone matching her description has left the building. As the search intensified, Elvis's performance continued. He was now performing "Love Me Tender," one of his most beloved ballads, when Morrison made the difficult decision that would change everything. The security team's search had been going on for nearly 30 minutes, and they were no closer to finding Rose Williams. Standard protocol suggested that it was time to consider more drastic measures. Morrison approached the stage manager, a veteran of hundreds of Elvis concerts who knew how to handle any crisis that might arise during a show. But a missing elderly person with dementia was unprecedented territory. "We need to consider stopping the show," Morrison said quietly. "We've got a 76-year-old woman with Alzheimer's missing for over 30 minutes. We've searched everywhere we can think of, but this building is too big, and there are too many people. We might need to make an announcement and ask for the audience's help." The stage manager looked shocked. "Stop an Elvis show? Do you understand what you're asking? There are 15,000 people here. Stopping the show could cause chaos. Leaving an elderly woman with dementia lost and scared could cause a tragedy." Morrison replied firmly. "We need to weigh the risks. How long should we let this go on before we acknowledge that we need help?" The stage manager realized Morrison was right. As much as everyone wanted to handle the situation quietly, they were rapidly approaching the point where they needed to prioritize finding Rose Williams over protecting the show's continuity. "Let me talk to Elvis," the stage manager said. He'll need to make the final decision about how to handle this. Elvis was just finishing Love Me Tender when the stage manager approached the edge of the stage and gestured for him to come over. Elvis, thinking there might be a technical issue or a simple scheduling matter, walked to the side of the stage where he could hear the stage manager without stopping the show entirely. "Elvis, we've got a situation," the stage manager said quietly, but urgently. "There's a 76-year-old woman with Alzheimer's disease missing in the audience. Security's been searching for over 30 minutes, and they can't find her. They're asking if we should make an announcement and ask for help from the crowd." Elvis stopped moving. His expression shifted from performer mode to genuine concern as he processed what he was hearing. "How long did you say she's been missing?" "Over 30 minutes. Her name is Rose Williams. She was here with her family, and she just disappeared during the show. Security says with her condition, she could be anywhere, and might not even respond to people trying to help her." Elvis looked out at the crowd of 15,000 people who were waiting for him to continue the show. Then he thought about a 76-year-old woman, possibly scared and confused, lost somewhere in this massive building. For Elvis, the choice was clear. The arena began to buzz with organized activity. People were pulling out phones to use as flashlights, checking under seats, looking in aisles and stairways. The search was more thorough than any security team could have managed alone, and it was being conducted with a level of care and concern that touched everyone involved. Henry and Patricia Williams were overwhelmed by the response. They had gone from feeling helpless and terrified to being surrounded by thousands of people who cared about finding their missing family member. Strangers were approaching them to ask for more details about Rose, to offer comfort, and to promise that they would find her. "I can't believe this is happening," Patricia said to her father as they watched the crowd methodically searching every corner of the arena. "All these people looking for Mom." Henry was fighting back tears. "Your mother would be amazed. She always believed in the goodness of people, even when her disease made her forget so much else." As the search continued, Elvis remained on stage, coordinating with security and keeping the crowd organized. He had transformed from entertainer to community leader, and his natural charisma was being channeled into something much more important than a concert performance. "How are we doing, folks?" Elvis asked into the microphone. Everyone checking their areas thoroughly. "Remember, Mrs. Williams might be somewhere quiet where she went to escape the noise and crowd. Check anywhere someone might go to sit down and rest." The search had been going on for about 20 minutes when a voice called out from the upper level of the arena. "I think I found her." The entire arena fell silent as everyone looked up toward the voice. A middle-aged man was waving from the upper concourse level, near what appeared to be a maintenance area. "She's up here, but she seems scared. She's sitting by herself, and she won't talk to me." Security guards immediately began making their way up to the upper level, while Elvis coordinated from the stage. "That's great, sir. Thank you so much. Security is on the way up there. Everyone else, please give them some room to work, and let's keep this calm and quiet." Captain Morrison and 2 other security guards reached the upper level where the man had found Rose. She was indeed sitting alone on a bench near a maintenance entrance, looking small and confused in her blue dress and white cardigan. Her silver hair was slightly disheveled, and she was clutching her purse tightly to her chest. "Mrs. Williams," Morrison said gently, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. "Rose, we've been looking for you. Your family is worried about you." Rose looked up at him with the clouded expression that family members of Alzheimer's patients know all too well. She was clearly disoriented and didn't recognize Morrison or understand why she was being approached by strangers. "I don't know where I am," Rose said quietly, her voice trembling with confusion and fear. "I was listening to music, and now I don't know where I am. Everything is so loud." Morrison knelt down to Rose's level, speaking in the gentle, patient tone that he had learned was most effective with elderly people in crisis. "You're safe, Rose. You're at the International Hotel in Las Vegas. You came here tonight to see Elvis Presley perform, remember? You're here with your family, and they've been looking for you, because they love you and they were worried." At the mention of Elvis Presley, something shifted in Rose's expression. The confusion didn't disappear, but there was a flicker of recognition, a spark of memory that seemed to cut through the fog of her disease. "Elvis," Rose said, her voice suddenly stronger. The young man with the beautiful voice. Morrison smiled, realizing that Rose's connection to Elvis might be the key to helping her feel safe and oriented. "That's right, Rose. Elvis Presley. He's here tonight, and he's been very worried about you. In fact, he stopped his entire show to help look for you. Would you like to see him?" Rose nodded eagerly, and for the first time since she had been found, she seemed fully present and alert. "I'd like that very much," she said. "I remember that boy. He had such talent, and nobody wanted to give him a chance except—" She paused, a look of concentration crossing her face as if she was trying to grasp a memory that was just out of reach. Morrison helped Rose to her feet and began gently guiding her back toward the main arena level. As they walked, he radioed down to the stage area to let Elvis know that Rose had been found and was being brought back to her family. The response from the crowd, when word spread that Rose had been found, was unlike anything anyone had experienced at a concert. Instead of applause or cheering, there was a collective sigh of relief, followed by warm, supportive applause that acknowledged not just the successful search, but the community effort that had made it possible. Elvis was waiting at the edge of the stage when security brought Rose down to the arena level. Patricia and Henry were there too, crying with relief and gratitude as they prepared to be reunited with Rose. But when Rose saw Elvis, something extraordinary happened. The confusion that had clouded her features for months suddenly lifted, and her eyes became bright and clear with recognition. "Oh my goodness," Rose said, her voice filled with wonder and clarity. "You're not that young man anymore, but I remember you. You used to come to the radio station, so nervous and polite. You always called me ma'am even though I told you to call me Rose." Elvis was stunned. Not only did Rose recognize him, but she seemed to be remembering their interactions from over 20 years ago with perfect clarity. "Mrs. Williams," Elvis said, his voice thick with emotion. "Rose, you remember me?" "Of course I remember you," Rose replied, her mind suddenly sharp and focused in a way her family hadn't seen in months. "You were that sweet boy from Tupelo who recorded at Sun Studio. I played your first song on WHBQ when nobody else would give you a chance. That's all right, wasn't it? You were so worried nobody would like it." The crowd around them was absolutely silent, witnessing something that seemed almost miraculous. Rose's family was crying, security guards were amazed, and Elvis himself was struggling to maintain his composure as he realized he was talking to the woman who had helped launch his career. "You changed my life, Rose," Elvis said, taking her hands in his. "You believed in me when I was just a scared kid who didn't know if anyone would ever want to hear my music. You played my songs, you encouraged me, you helped me believe in myself. I never forgot that." Rose smiled, and for that moment, the vibrant, sharp radio personality she had once been shown through the disease that had taken so much from her. "I knew you had something special," Rose said. "Your voice had so much heart in it. I told everyone who would listen that you were going to be a star. And look at you now. You stopped your whole show just to help find one old lady who got confused and wandered off." "You're not just any old lady, Rose," Elvis replied. "You're the woman who gave me my first break. You're the person who believed in me before I believed in myself. Finding you isn't just the right thing to do. It's the least I can do for everything you did for me." Henry and Patricia were witnessing a side of Rose they hadn't seen in months. The clarity, the personality, the sharp memory. It was as if her connection to Elvis had temporarily pushed back the fog of Alzheimer's and allowed her true self to emerge. "Mom," Patricia said softly, "we've been so worried about you. You wandered away during the show and we couldn't find you." Rose turned to her daughter with a slightly confused expression, as if she was trying to reconcile different parts of her memory. "I remember the music starting, and then it got so loud and crowded. I think I went looking for somewhere quiet to sit. But I knew I was supposed to be here for something important." She looked back at Elvis. "I just couldn't remember what until I saw you. Dr. Samuel Curtis, a geriatrician who happened to be in the audience that night, had approached the group when he realized what was happening. He introduced himself to Patricia and Henry and asked permission to observe Rose's interaction with Elvis. "What you're witnessing," Dr. Curtis explained to Rose's family, "is actually not uncommon with Alzheimer's patients. Sometimes powerful emotional connections or significant memories can temporarily break through the confusion. Music and strong emotional associations are often the last things to be affected by the disease." Elvis overheard Dr. Curtis's explanation and turned to Rose with an idea. "Rose, would you like to help me finish the show tonight? I was in the middle of Can't Help Falling in Love when we stopped to look for you. Maybe you could sit on stage with me while I sing it. Just like old times when you used to have musicians perform live on your radio show." Rose's eyes lit up with joy and recognition. "I'd be honored," she said with dignity and grace that reminded everyone of the professional broadcaster she had once been. "It's been many years since I've been part of a live music performance." What happened next became one of the most memorable moments in entertainment history. Elvis helped Rose up onto the stage, where a comfortable chair was quickly provided for her. The crowd of 15,000 people, who had just participated in the largest coordinated search effort ever conducted during a live performance, now witnessed something equally unprecedented. A reunion between a performer and the person who had first believed in his talent. Elvis returned to his microphone and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet Rose Williams. More than 20 years ago, when I was just a 19-year-old kid who had never performed for more than a handful of people, Rose was a radio DJ in Memphis who took a chance on my music. She played my first recording when no one else would. She encouraged me when I was ready to give up, and she helped build the audience that would eventually make all of this possible." The crowd erupted in applause, not just for Rose, but for the beautiful story of mentorship and loyalty that was unfolding before them. "Rose has Alzheimer's disease," Elvis continued, "and tonight she got confused and scared in this big crowd. But when we found her and she saw me, something amazing happened. For a few minutes her memory became crystal clear, and she remembered not just who I was, but how we met, and the kindness she showed me when I needed it most." Elvis looked at Rose, who was sitting in her chair on stage, looking more alert and present than she had in months. "Rose, this song is for you, and for everyone who takes a chance on someone when nobody else will. This is for everyone who believes in people before they believe in themselves." Elvis began playing Can't Help Falling in Love, but this performance was different from any he had ever given. As he sang, Rose began to mouth along with the words, and occasionally her voice could be heard harmonizing softly with his. The crowd was absolutely silent, except for Elvis's voice and Rose's gentle accompaniment. When the song ended, Elvis knelt beside Rose's chair and took her hand. "Thank you, Rose, for everything you did for me, and for reminding all of us tonight what really matters." Rose looked at him with eyes that were bright and clear, though everyone knew that the clarity might not last much longer. "Thank you for stopping your show to find me," she said. "And thank you for remembering a silly old radio DJ who just played the music she loved." "You're not silly, and you're not just anything," Elvis replied. "You're the reason I'm here tonight, and you're the reason all these people got to be part of something beautiful." As security helped Rose down from the stage to rejoin her family, the crowd gave her a standing ovation that lasted for several minutes. It wasn't just applause for Rose individually, but recognition of what they had all participated in together. A community coming together to help someone in need, and a beautiful reminder of how acts of kindness can ripple across decades. Elvis finished his show that night, but everyone agreed that the music was secondary to what had happened. 15,000 people had become part of a story about compassion, community, and the enduring power of human connection. The story of Rose Williams and the concert that stopped for one missing person became national news within days. Journalists wanted to understand how a rock and roll concert had been transformed into a coordinated search and rescue operation, and how one woman's recognition of Elvis had created such a powerful moment. Dr. Curtis was interviewed extensively about Rose's temporary clarity, and what it meant for understanding Alzheimer's disease. What happened with Mrs. Williams demonstrates something we're still learning about memory and neurological diseases. Dr. Curtis explained to reporters, strong emotional connections, especially those related to music, can sometimes break through even advanced cognitive impairment. Mrs. Williams' professional and personal connection to Elvis, combined with her lifelong love of music, created the perfect conditions for a moment of clarity. The medical community became very interested in Rose's case, and she became part of a research study examining the effects of music therapy and meaningful personal connections on Alzheimer's patients. While her overall condition continued to progress, Rose had several more episodes of clarity over the following months, usually triggered by music or conversations about her radio career. Patricia Williams began keeping a journal of her mother's clear moments, and she noticed that they were often connected to music or memories of her professional life. Mom might not remember what she had for breakfast, Patricia told researchers, but play an Elvis song or talk about her days at the radio station, and suddenly she's completely present and articulate. It's like music unlocks a part of her brain that the disease can't touch. The Williams family became advocates for music therapy in Alzheimer's care, working with medical facilities to develop programs that used personally meaningful music to help patients maintain connections to their memories and identities. Henry Williams, despite his own advancing age, became a volunteer with several organizations that provided support to families dealing with Alzheimer's disease. He often told Rose's story as an example of how love, patience, and understanding could create moments of connection even in the midst of progressive memory loss. That night at the Elvis concert taught me that Rose is still in there. Henry would tell other families. The disease might hide her from us most of the time, but the person we love is still there, and sometimes if we're patient and we pay attention, we get to see her again. Elvis himself was profoundly affected by the evening's events. He had always been generous with his time and resources, but the experience with Rose Williams deepened his understanding of how his fame and influence could be used to help others. In the months following the concert, Elvis began incorporating more direct audience interaction into his performances, always watching for people who might need special attention or assistance. He also increased his charitable work, particularly focusing on organizations that helped elderly people and families dealing with Alzheimer's disease. That night changed how I think about what it means to be successful, Elvis told Joe Esposito, his longtime friend and manager. All the records and concerts don't mean anything if you forget about the people who helped you get there, or if you can't use what you have to help others when they need it. The International Hotel, recognizing the positive publicity and community goodwill generated by the evening's events, developed new protocols for handling medical emergencies and missing persons during large events. They also established the Rose Williams Community Care Fund, which provided assistance to families dealing with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. The venue began training all staff members in techniques for interacting with elderly people and individuals with cognitive impairments, ensuring that future incidents would be handled with the same compassion and effectiveness that had characterized the search for Rose Williams. Captain Morrison, the head of security who had coordinated the search effort, became a national expert on crowd management and emergency response in entertainment venues. He developed training programs that were adopted by venues across the country, emphasizing the importance of community involvement and compassionate response to medical emergencies. The Rose Williams incident taught us that sometimes the best security response is to trust your community, Morrison explained in training seminars. Those 15,000 people became our partners in solving a problem that our professional staff couldn't handle alone. It showed me that people want to help each other, they just need to be asked in the right way. The story of the concert also had a lasting impact on the broader community's understanding of Alzheimer's disease and elderly care. Media coverage of Rose's story helped reduce stigma around cognitive impairment and encouraged more open discussion of the challenges faced by families dealing with dementia. Several major medical organizations used Rose's story in educational materials to illustrate the importance of patience, understanding, and innovative approaches to memory care. Her case became part of medical school curricula as an example of how meaningful personal connections could positively affect patients with neurological diseases. Rose Williams lived for another 4 years after the concert, with her condition gradually progressing as expected with Alzheimer's disease. But throughout those years, she continued to have moments of clarity that were almost always connected to music, particularly Elvis's music. Patricia would often play Elvis records for her mother, and during these listening sessions, Rose would sometimes return to her former sharp, articulate self, sharing detailed memories of her radio career and her early interactions with Elvis that she couldn't access during her more confused periods. It was like Mom had two different lives. Patricia reflected years later, most of the time she was lost in the fog of the disease. But when the music played, especially Elvis's music, she could step back into who she used to be, even if it was just for a few minutes. When Rose passed away in 1979, her funeral was attended not just by family and friends, but by dozens of people whose lives had been touched by her story. Elvis, despite his own declining health, attended the service and spoke about Rose's impact on his career and her example of strength in the face of illness. "Rose Williams gave me my first chance when nobody else would," Elvis said at the service. "But more than that, she showed me what it looks like to face life's challenges with grace and dignity. Even when her memory failed her, her heart never did. She remained kind, loving, and grateful for every moment of clarity she was given." The story of Rose Williams and the concert that stopped to find her became a permanent part of entertainment history, cited in books about Elvis Presley, studies of community response to emergencies, and research on Alzheimer's disease and music therapy. But perhaps more importantly, it became a story that people told to illustrate the power of community action, the importance of treating elderly people with dignity and respect, and the enduring impact that small acts of kindness can have across decades. Today, more than 45 years after that August night in Las Vegas, the story continues to inspire people facing similar challenges with elderly family members, communities responding to emergencies, and anyone trying to understand how individual actions can create positive change. The Rose Williams Foundation, established by her family after her death, continues to support research into Alzheimer's disease and music therapy, while also providing assistance to families dealing with the challenges of caring for loved ones with dementia. In the end, what started as a missing person emergency became a powerful reminder that we are all connected, that our actions toward others can have lasting impact, and that sometimes the most important performances happen not on stage but in the moments when we choose to care for each other.